All right. So really excited for this webinar in particular. We've been planning this one for a bit of time. We think that this will be very insightful for everybody. I'm sure you're joining to really gain some valuable insight, learnings, and understandings from Josh as we go through really how to level up your practice, your best practices, how you're dealing with clients, and really create these value add services. So really excited for today. I will leave it to both Josh and Anita to dive in from here. But yeah, so on this call, we'll have Anita, co-founder of LiveFlow and CEO. I'm sure many of you know her. She's leading the charge here. Really has been crucial to LiveFlow being what it is today, and how we've been able to help customers like Josh in various task practices and doing exactly this, moving beyond bookkeeping. And Josh, who everyone is here for, won't even do his intro justice, but as you saw in the descriptor, really impressive background coming from PwC, wanting to build something on his own and creating an incredible company that allowed him to truly live his life in the way that he wanted to while being at a level of success that he was striving for. Really impressive. And again, we're really excited to dive into how you can apply a lot of these learnings and practices through very direct ways today. With that, Anita, I will kick it off to you to continue our intro here.
Cool. Thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, very, very excited to be here and share this learnings with you. Josh is very close to LiveFlow and very dear to my heart personally, because Josh was one of the first 10 customers that we signed and significantly changed the product and developed the product with us. And as you might know, we are very customer centric. This is our Bible, just to be with the customers at all times and build for them. And Josh is one of those people who helped us to build LiveFlow. So before I give it over to Josh, I'll just give you a little bit of a story behind the curtain and how we met. So we're looking right now at the screenshot from my LinkedIn message that I sent back to Josh in November 2021. So now we transfer back 3.5 years when we were just a teeny tiny startup, trying to find our feet and figure out whom we're building and what exactly we should build. And we just graduated from Y Combinator. We raised our, yes, it is recorded, Christina, thank you for the question. So we raised our seed round, and we desperately needed feedback. So the way this works in the startup land, you build something for someone, but you really need to build for the customer so that it makes sense to them, first of all, not only to the founded team. So we were fairly small, only the founded team at the time started to understand that financial reporting should be done in spreadsheets, and that was the main thing for the initial cohort of users, and it's still true till today. When we have multiple products, we still build on top of spreadsheets. So we learned that people wanted to connect to QuickBooks Online, which is one of the biggest accounting platforms I'm sure everyone is familiar with. And we needed to pull it into spreadsheets so that it's as flexible as one can imagine. And people can build their own financial dashboards that would make sense for them. And it turned out their clients. So we just realized that in November that year, 2021, that we would work very closely with accounting and fractional CFO firms. And you can see me being an SDR, reaching out to people on LinkedIn and email, and even cold calling out of nowhere, saying that I'm just one of the co-founders and I really need your feedback. That's all we needed at that time. And luckily, Josh decided to reply to this random person out of London, UK, to just have a conversation and give me feedback on what we were cooking. So yeah, I reached out to Josh saying like, look, Josh, I think there is something where you can connect to QuickBooks Online and pull budget versus actuals and then customize it as you like. At the time, it was on the Google Sheets, so I really need your feedback. And then you can see me chasing Josh down on LinkedIn saying that we have a call book next week, please show up, because I had a lot of no-shows at that time. And yeah, Josh responded, and yeah, I would love to give it over to you and maybe give a little bit of history how our relationships developed over time. But yeah, welcome, Josh, one of our best customers out there.
Well, thank you for having me. A little more background on myself. they refer to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I decided pretty early on in my career to start a consulting practice that I've had for about, I think, 16 years now. And really, it came out of a place from in being in that environment of public accounting and bigger companies and whatnot. I started to find myself getting projects for things in the entertainment industry, and I found creative people and entrepreneurs, and this was in 2006, 2007, and it was a really exciting time, as we all know, with YouTube being a startup at that time and Facebook just launching and all these kind of new ways to build business, and it really tapped into creatives. And I loved, as an accounting professional, that I was finding the application of a profession like accounting that feels generally dull at times, and to be able to apply it to these creative industries and build. And so that was the beginnings back in 2006, 2007, where I really started to go off on my own. And what it was in those days and building ever since was figuring out, how do I work and what is value add? And I think for any professional, it's always easy to default down to bookkeeping as a service, because that's the kind of bread and butter that everybody needs and wants and asks for. And what becomes important over time is defining how you can truly help businesses beyond the perspective of yesterday through accounting, and bridge into the view of tomorrow in growth and strategy, that CFO perspective. And for me, it was the need to find tools that could help support me and do it in a very efficient way. So it wasn't always downloading reports each time and creating the wheel over and over again. So LiveFlow has always been a wonderful tool for me. And what we're looking at here are some of the fun clients that I've been able to work with over the years, and really a lot of the core values that I've developed within my practice and the brand that I really wanted to create, which is CFO Minded. And yeah, I'm excited to dive in today and sort of talk through some of those elements that have been really value add.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for those kind words and the breakdown there. I think the history is very grand between everyone here. So yeah, again, really excited for this conversation. With that, Josh, I'll leave it to you to dive in and take us through.
Fantastic. So I want to start with going through a little high level here, and then what I wanted to do was I'll take over the screen and just show a couple of the different ways that I've utilized cash flow within these bullet points here. So to speak to like the opportunities and where I think that all of us can drive value back to, be it that you are your own consulting firm or bookkeeper or whatever, or if you're even internal within a small business on a full-time basis. I think that there's always opportunity to look at how to expand it and create more value. So, again, to sort of set the stage of where this is coming from is really reflecting back on what clients ask for. It's very easy, again, to provide that bookkeeping and accounting and your standard balance sheet, P&L, maybe even cash flow report, but to hear their pain points, to hear their needs, and in particular, over the past couple of years, coming out of COVID, for me, I helped coach through and advise so many companies that went through really difficult financial times. And that was sort of a unique moment for me. So these kinds of value adds between budgeting, cash flow, flash reports are a really helpful way for us as accountants to drive that forward-looking perspective and bring context. Remember that the basis of and purpose of financial statements is that it's a useful tool for management. And I think often I see QuickBooks or accounting systems set up in a way where you put together a P&L and you end up with a list of accounts, your chart of accounts that's just alphabetized. And what becomes really important is going to that next step and really thinking contextually around, how do I augment this so that maybe we're grouping accounts or whatever it may be in a manner that tells the story of the business. You know, your P&L is really the story of the business, the revenue that you're generating, the expenses that you incur. So one of the things that I found very helpful in regards to LiveFlow was standardizing my chart of accounts. One of the things that standardizing the chart of accounts did is it allowed me to create really subheader kind of buckets of accounts, such as sales and marketing, personnel, office expenses, and from in there, getting into the sub accounts that live within there. And from those header accounts, it really allowed me to drive LiveFlow in a much more productive way in regards to setting up some of the spreadsheets that I'll show you in a moment. To actually go back to that last one real quick. This is just kind of a view of these standard reports. And again, thinking about like this summarized view of putting this in front of a client versus your standard P&L. So the three elements that I've outlined here is budgeting being one. The second being, if you want to flip to the next slide, cash flow. And again, I'll get into this in a bit more detail, but the cash flow, obviously, then taking that forward-looking perspective of not only what's happening from a net profit standpoint, but also what's happening on a cash standpoint. And the third, next slide, being flash reports. One of the things with flash reports that become important to me are really getting clear on what story you want to communicate with the business owner and how do they look at the business, and ensuring that how they want to look at the business is in line with the data that we're putting in front of them. So I'm going to actually, Michael, if I can share my screen real quick.
Yep, you should be good to
Okay,
share.
perfect. So I want to start with this kind of it says investor dashboard. I've used this as an investor dashboard for a company, and you know what I've done here is with the client to be able to create just very simple inputs. I've always built things in a way that allow this. I put blue cells for them to input, and anything that's not a blue cell, I tell them to not touch because it's formula driven. In a way that, again, from a very simple level, they can create all the lines that they want to drive this, to list out the different personnel and when are we hiring them and all these things. And, you know, for me then behind the scenes to be able to pull in reports out of LiveFlow, such as a trailing 3-month P&L and a trailing 3-month balance sheet, which again, I'm not showing them on the face, but what I'm doing is I'm pulling data in through formulas that I've created that are giving them this perspective. This is a brand new company that is just kind of eking their way to launching. So really monitoring what is that cash balance historically and how fast are we burning. Looking at not just the last month of expenses, but what's the average of the past 3 months? And are we kind of trending in the same way historically? And then as we look forward, again, what is that doing to profitability? And what is that doing to cash flow? And when are we raising money? And when are, you know, for example, inventory purchases coming out? So these are all tools that I've created that, again, utilizing LiveFlow in a way that this automatically rolls forward each month. Everything from the date to the data in here is pulling from this trailing 3 months that LiveFlow automatically updates every hour. So then, therefore, at the end of May, this will roll forward to March, April, May, which will then automatically update this front page. And what this really does, and really the core of this entire talk, is this really becomes a nice active tool to engage with a client, with a business owner, to say, are we going to hit these pre-sale numbers? What if we hit 250 instead of 300? And to have that kind of an active conversation and flip back to the front and say, got it, what happens to cash flow? Those are the kind of conversations that take the core of accounting and really bridge it into a highly productive conversation that's addressing the needs and concerns of the business owner.
Josh,
Very
I have a question here.
Yeah,
So someone submitted this question ahead of the webinar, and I wanted to make sure we cover it. So how do we go from standard financial reports such as P&L and balance sheet into
Yep.
financial dashboards, and how did you actually build the whole thing? So of course we have a library of pre-built templates, but it's not one of them. It's something that you built and developed for your client. So what is the mental model for you to transition over to CFO thinking and building out this model from scratch? Can you just walk us through the steps?
Sure. So again, one of the things that I think becomes really important in that regard, and I'll get into sort of the nitty-gritty a little bit more, but I think having the context of a few months, again, like it gives some perspective. So from that CFO perspective, to have an element of understanding of how consistent are these expenses, and then therefore how predictable are expenses, or where's their fluctuation, or where's their seasonality. Having that kind of information and being able to do even that little bit of analysis is truly what starts to improve the forecasting element and predict going forward what we think will happen. All of forecasting and all of projecting and all of being a CFO and all of this forward-looking stuff is really just our best guess. So the best way to make your best guess is to have the most informed information from the accounting looking backwards. And to speak to that, it could be an element of ensuring that we're looking at things on a little bit more of an accrual basis rather than a cash basis. So we're getting that consistency month over month. But ultimately, and a little more into the question, I think being kind of formula driven is, again, thinking about what are the things that we want to look at. I think what becomes important in building a dashboard and building a spreadsheet is before you get into creating formulas and really lining the thing up, is what information is pertinent. What are the things that your client talks about a lot, and also what do you want to talk about? A lot of this needs to be driven from the professional. And so utilizing, the reason that I've chosen some of these headers and some of these sections is the ease of writing formulas, because when you get into here, you get things like total income and total cost of goods sold. And no matter what you have within the QuickBooks environment, QuickBooks Online, these are standard lines that I'm able to write formulas against to look up this, look up the total, or look up the month name. And those are the things that are allowing me to organize the data on the front end. The other thing that I tend to always do is I'll make these really ugly data tabs that are just pulling together this information. And one of the most important things that I've learned about best utilizing LiveFlow is actually running multiple reports in here. So in this particular instance, and I would differentiate this then from other clients, but one of the things that I wanted to present on here, since it's a brand new company, is inception to date. So I have one P&L here that is doing inception to date and going to that last month and giving me the total here. Whereas this one, I'm just doing the trailing 3 months. So for me, I'm able to run all these different reports, which ultimately I'm just going to go in and I'm going to hide from my client anyway, because I don't want them to get into this level of detail. I want them, and I want our conversation to then be focused on here. So it is then therefore understanding what are the multiple reports that I can pull together through LiveFlow that are going to update real time, that are going to allow me to build this dashboard in a functional way that tells a story. And again, it's not everything needs to be that P&L year to date or P&L for the current month. I want to contrast that a little bit with a different client that I've used this for, where again, I'm using a little formula here that, today is a formula in Excel that literally spits out today's date. So it says if today is greater than this month down here, then it says actual, and if not, it says budget. And this is obviously indicating to the client of what's forward-looking and what's actual. And then this is also allowing me to decide, am I pulling from the budget or am I pulling from the P&L? And things that I've decided to do within here is also given that view of an AP aging and things like that, where they may want to see, and that's always an active part of our conversation around, like, great, what's outstanding, this and that. One of the things that I then do is, because it becomes a little funky because it's kind of untraditional, but no matter what, I just have our current AP balance rolling forward, because whatever my budgeted month is, I'm concerned about that and my forward-looking cash. So as I flip to actual here, rather than the normal cash flow calculation, I'm just pulling my balance sheet cash balance. So then no matter what, for the actual column, my ending cash is real cash. And then the budgeting is literally pulling from these forward-looking budgets that we're creating, where again, we can go in and say, do we think we'll hit 30,000? Is 20,000 reasonable, or should we say 10,000? Because as, again, we look at the forward-looking, it's then allowing us to look at what the effects are on cash flow. And from this, to inform us, are we able to, in this case, pay down these credit cards in this fashion? Do we need to look at getting a loan? Do we need to look at different ways to finance the company? And again, from that CFO perspective, what becomes the most value add is having that future viewpoint to look ahead and anticipate these needs for clients. Because if they do need a loan, let's say, that could take 60 days at best to secure a loan. Or it may be more urgent and we may want to tap into Shopify loans or QuickBooks offers loans and some of these quick fixes. But again, it's the forward-looking, anticipating of where's our lowest point. If we want to execute with all of this, how do we get there? And again, it all lends itself to a dynamic conversation. The other piece that I was showing within, I had a little screenshot of it. And again, speaking to where I have a P&L here, which is very typical month over month, I then have this weekly P&L that I ran, and I would typically hide this. But what it's then doing is it's allowing me, I created these formulas to look at the literal headers here. So I'm pulling the dates from this row here and spitting it out there, looking at what was, in this case, the Shopify revenue. And what I'm doing is I'm then saying, here's the average, here's the trend. And it's really, again, the point becomes having a tool to talk about and data to talk about and information to talk about of what happened in this week. Did we run advertisement? Was it a holiday? What drove that? So that, again, we have context of what is normal revenue so that we can flip back and say, what is an appropriate budget going forward? And that's what I think ultimately drives that value add. And again, to bring it back to the context of this conversation, how do you both bring more value to your clients and charge more as a practitioner to proactively drive higher level value conversations with clients and to engage further? And engaging further allows you to charge more. Engaging deeper like this allows you to have a deeper understanding and to engage on a more deep level with the business owner about what the business is and how do they think about it. And again, how can you further support them through that financial lens that we all have and that perspective. So that is really what I found through creating these, also formatting things in a way that's really pretty and colorful, and maybe the conditional formatting turns red if it goes negative, because these are all things that visually cue a client in It really makes it digestible, you know, I mean, quite literally, like within here to go to format and use the alternating coloring to just call out these colors and bring more life to these dashboards, I think becomes a really important thing. One of the other things that I want to touch on that I know is a wonderful complementary service with LiveFlow. For me, I utilize a service called Bookkeep. And Bookkeep is a trusted partner with LiveFlow and a service that allows plugins of data. And the reason that I love Bookkeep is it takes platforms like Shopify and books an automatic journal entry every single day for Shopify entries, and many other platforms as well. And because it automatically each night books that journal entry, I therefore have a weekly P&L that automatically happens without me doing any bookkeeping. I do not need to touch a bank sync. I do not need to match transactions. I do not need to do anything because this literally within here is automatically populating from that, which allows this weekly dashboard to automatically populate. Because what I'm doing is I ensure that I'm only creating the flash report on sales, which I know are automatically coming in from Bookkeep. And I can tell a client to look at this at any single point in time, and I don't have to stress about, oh my God, I need to get in and get the bookkeeping updated. I need to get the bank feed updated. They can just literally go anytime at their leisure. And again, touching back to the value of LiveFlow within here to provide data, to feel like your client is getting something value added. You know, value add doesn't always mean getting accounting perfect and correct and a perfect financial statement and having that budget to actual. That's a component of it. But sometimes the things that are easy for us are hugely valuable to business owners, such as getting these weekly flash reports intact, or again, having conversation around budget and LiveFlow, allowing a very simple structure around, great, what do we think sales are going to be? I want you, business owner, who is afraid of spreadsheets and doesn't want to touch anything, to engage in this and to have an active conversation around, great, who are the agencies and what are we having them do? And how much are we spending on digital marketing? And what do we want that to do? So again, it's not a science. It is something that very much can adapt from client to client. But back to sort of the original point that I was talking about in regards to chart of accounts is getting these kind of categories in a place that become very standard really allows, I'll kind of show you in a bit more detail here. For me to say the 6,000 account are sales and marketing, 6,100 digital advertising. What I don't care about is if a client wanted sub accounts under digital advertising and having a line for Facebook and a line for Google and a line for whatever other avenues they're doing digital advertising. But for me to know this is what you spend on digital advertising, I think that's valuable versus what are you spending on outside agencies and consulting services, so that again, we have a summarized number here of what we're spending on this. And that's where I was talking about being mindful of the chart of accounts and thinking about grouping so that we can have a conversation around sales and marketing, or we can have a conversation around office expenses and the office expense, including perhaps rent and utilities and those things to kind of run the office. So, so that's how I've really thought about the workflow from the core accounting, from the chart of accounts, to then be able to organize in such a fashion that really leads to the opportunity to create a really beautiful dashboard. So,
Josh, a couple of questions submitted here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the demo. Let's talk about your communication with the clients. So
Yeah.
I think you emphasize that now they understand the business and you can have a deeper conversation with them. How do you communicate? Does it take you actually more time because you provide so many insights? or it's less time and they can access the spreadsheet? I know it's a concern for many people. How do you prefer to communicate?
Yeah, so I've tried different things over the years. Some things that worked well for me is with some clients, I will literally do a once a week call for 15 minutes. I have no agenda. It's more of a kind of a what's up conversation, because what it's doing and what I think is important within that communication is establishing yourself as that value add professional. And by engaging on a regular basis for a short amount of time, it allowed me to have a better understanding of what is the business owner dealing with on a day-to-day basis, what's their current headache, where can I chime in from that financial perspective, maybe give them some perspective that I saw with another client that might be pricing. Maybe it's, hey, hold on. Before you send that out, you should ask for a 50% deposit before you engage with this client, because collections take a long time. So by having those, not only is it engaging us professionals within their operating business, but I do believe that it creates more of a stickiness and a longevity to the engagement, so that they're a client that stays with you for a long time, because you end up with more foundational knowledge about their business.
Got it. And let's imagine you have a new client. How do you pitch them on the packages? Because we all know there might be like categories of clients, let's say A, B, and C, where A are the ones that require the CFO services. Then you have B, bread and butter, like more or less the standard package that you have, and C, maybe like bookkeeping clients. So
Yeah.
can you talk more through this leveling of your clients, and also how do you pitch your packages, and how do you make sure that they select something that makes sense? And how
Yeah.
you price, if you can talk about it as well.
Yeah, definitely. So this is always a funny topic for me, because when I decided to name my company CFO Minded, which was about 10 years into my practice, I changed the name to CFO Minded. And I wrestled with this idea of, if I'm preaching the importance of CFO services, can I just offer bookkeeping? Or am I contradicting myself? So where I lead with engagements now with any new client is I start from a place of a project, and I ensure that we have built a budget, be it a 3-year budget or the 1-year budget or whatever it is.
Even if it's a
Because
bookkeeping client.
yeah, 100%. And what I say is, I won't do the bookkeeping without the CFO. So the CFO service has to come first for me, ahead of the bookkeeping, because I feel like I'm shortchanging clients by just doing bookkeeping. And it's important for me to establish that element of, no, we need to do this bigger stuff first. Because if you're thinking
How
about
would
best
someone be
practices,
convinced if they come to you to maybe ask for bookkeeping services? Why on earth would they start with CFO services?
correct. Oh, so why would they? Because I'm going to tell them that we're not improving things. And I hear that's what you want. I know that's what you need. But for me to do a good job, and the reason that you came to me, and the reason that I'm more expensive than just a bookkeeper, is because we're leading with CFO services. And I think that that is the crux of what enables pricing at a higher level. The other thing that is really nice about starting with a project like that is, number one, it's kind of your proverbial walk before you run. You get a little flavor of working with the client before you dive in deeper into the bookkeeping, because we all know that once you're doing bookkeeping, you are like in it. But if you start with the project, maybe you're figuring out that there's a dynamic or a personality or a working style that doesn't really jive with you. So that's number one. Number two is, it allows us accounting professionals to then start from a place of having a deeper understanding of the business, versus just, I hate my old bookkeeper, they don't do good enough work, or whatever fire is going on that caused them to come to you. And allows, this allows me to drive the engagement from the get-go versus being reactive to what they need. And from a pricing standpoint, I generally will charge anywhere from $3,500 to $6,500, maybe more, depending on the complexity or size of the company, to build these financial models. And And it's great because what I'm doing within that engagement typically is I'm reviewing the chart of accounts and I'm making, excuse me, changes to the chart of accounts. And I'm communicating that this is making things better for us to communicate to the, excuse me, into the future. So,
Got it.
and from there, I think we can all then better assess what is the bookkeeping needs, you know, be it that you want to charge a flat rate or an hourly rate, but again, you've now gotten in enough where you're not locked in and you're not doing accounting and maybe you don't have bank access yet or payroll access yet. You're not in it that deep, but you've now gotten that perspective of what the organization looks like.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, on this note, I would love to open the floor for your questions. And there's something also submitted here, so we'll read it out loud. So Julie Logan asks, will the sample Google Sheets be shared so that we can learn from the formulas that you've used?
So I'm very happy to share mine. I know LiveFlow has their premium templates as well. So yes, very happy to share. And yeah.
Cool, amazing. Yeah, we all love templates for sure. Something that started to appear, I think, over the last month or so. I don't know why exactly that happened over the last month. Several people reached out to us asking if they can actually submit their templates and create like a community library of templates. So something like Josh Greenbaum's template or someone else's template. So that's something that we are considering introducing in product, where you can submit your own models if you want to share, or maybe sift through some of our customers' models. So that's something that we are actively discussing in-house, and probably that will be the place where you'll find Josh's template going forward. Okay, so more questions here. Are you also providing back office support, AP, AR, payroll, in addition to the CFO and bookkeeping services?
So I have on occasion, I'm starting to move away from that more and more because I've found that so many clients are, when you take on bill pay and payroll and things like that, what I've found is it really muddies up the calendar a lot, and it becomes all of a sudden you have clients that have payroll on the 15th and the end of the month, and then you have another client that has payroll every other Friday, and then you have another client that has payroll every other Friday, but it's the other two Fridays. And it's become a little bit of a constant thing that becomes a lot. And so I've worked with building some infrastructure. I've used some outsourced bookkeepers myself. I'm personally gravitating more towards and back to CFO services and focusing on that as being the lead value for my firm that I want to offer.
Amazing. Do we have more questions?
Would it be helpful
just-
if I dive in and show LiveFlow a little bit more? I realize not everyone may have seen the platform in the background completely.
Yeah, I think that would be super helpful. And maybe from your standpoint, how exactly you use it. That would
Yeah.
be great. Cool. Thank
So
you.
the great thing with LiveFlow is it becomes an extension within Google Sheets. So if there were a brand new client that you're connecting, you're going to go in and create a report. And much like other services, you get a QuickBooks Connect or whatever it may be. So from within here, the manage report screen are the reports that I have created so far, and creating reports is the foundation to create a new report. And so there's templates within here, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I truly love is that you can connect multiple QuickBooks accounts within a single Google Sheet. So if you have a client that has, let's say, 2 or 3 entities, you can connect this all into one place by selecting with each report can come from a different company. So that's been hugely valuable to me. The other thing that you'll then see under the choose your report are fairly standard reports that you see out of QuickBooks. One of the things that has been most unique that I've always loved is the account list, which is the chart of accounts. QuickBooks, you're not able to download that report. So it's been helpful at times for me to be able to create the account list. And I'll show you really how easy it is that from an account list, if I wanted to instead call it chart of accounts, I can do it there. I create the report and you give it a short count, and right there, the chart of accounts comes up. And be it that you want to reference it in some way or whatever it may be, that's literally how easy it is to pull the reports in. With some of these other reports, I'll show things that I've already shown you on here, but that within a profit and loss for the date range, there's your typical date ranges that you would see within QuickBooks. You can fix the dates. So if you just wanted a 2-year period or a 6-month period, whatever it may be, or one of the newer features within LiveFlow that I've really tapped into more and more is this trailing window. So I'm picking the trailing 10 weeks for a week going from Saturday to Sunday in this case. And I pick Sunday to Saturday. I pick Sunday to Saturday because that's the same range that QuickBooks does, I believe. And so, but again, you can do trailing months, whatever it may be. And then again, similar to the financial statements in QuickBooks, you can change how you want things displayed. So this is not only helpful within having the actual report, but it may be helpful within how you want to reference things, be it by class or otherwise. And then there's wonderful settings in here where you can drill into things a bit more. You can kind of customize the formatting. One of the things that is wonderful also about LiveFlow is when you have the drill down turned on, this is a live link back to QuickBooks. So this would then be the 7 journal entries from Bookkeep that made up this week of revenue. So I don't think it will take me there necessarily, but it will click right back into that QuickBooks account if I were logged into that specific client. And it will give you that detail, no difference than if you were in QuickBooks clicking into a P&L and seeing that detail. So this is that same P&L. I want to show you one other thing that I've also done once in a while that's been really helpful with clients is that I'll go in and let's say I'm going to do profit and loss for all time, and within the advanced settings here, or sorry, within the filters, I have that if it's uncategorized expenses, so you're kind of just throwing that dump in of transactions that you don't know how to categorize and you want to ask a client what that is, that you can create a report that is, again, updating real time and pulling in just those uncategorized expenses. And what I should have done is a profit and loss detail. And so then therefore, if I go back, manage report, that if I switch that to, or I guess I'd have to run a new one. But what I've used this for is, again, to display just the detail within uncategorized transactions. And when I do that one, I'll ask clients to add comments within there as to what each of those transactions are, since I didn't know what they were. And I'll turn off the live feature for that because I don't want that continuously updating. I may just leave that and go through that detail with a client on a weekly basis. They can add comments. I can go back into QuickBooks and now recategorize all those uncategorized expenses. And then when I go back and I've categorized everything, I can then manually refresh that report versus it being auto refreshed on an hourly basis. So that's where you can play with what reports are live and refresh, which ones are not live, and you manually refresh by clicking that. And then you can decide the frequency to which the auto refresh happens. So that's a little deeper into sort of the back end of LiveFlow and how it connects into Google Sheets.
Perfect, cool. I know we need to wrap up soon, so I just want to make sure we cover all of the questions. And we have another question and a follow-up from Thomas. So Thomas is saying, so if you're not doing the back office work, how do you handle the anxiety of not knowing the current status of the books when presenting dashboards? Also, do you give a written or verbal disclaimer that your reports are based on the work of others and is only as accurate as that underlying work? Fantastic question.
Yeah, 100%. So no different than if you were thinking about within a general accounting department where you have a staff accountant, an accounting manager, a controller, a CFO. What becomes important as you move more towards these advisory type services is to challenge yourself to not rely on doing the accounting, but rather to review the accounting. So the opportunity becomes to do a detailed general ledger review. And when someone else is doing that data input of the bookkeeping, to allow that to happen, and you're going to go in once a month or once every 2 weeks or whatever cadence and review and make sure everything's correct and coach up the bookkeeper on anything that they need to do differently. And similarly, part of this value add structure may be, hey, I want to put bill.com in place. I want to put other services in place because that integration and workflow and approval process will create stronger internal controls. And again, that's that value add perspective of the CFO, thinking about risk, thinking about exposure, thinking about workflow, thinking about protecting that business owner. So they're not just handing their bank account over to you or to someone else and running with the whole thing.
All right, perfect. Yet another, I think it's a comment rather than a question from Mahathi. When I used the LiveFlow Excel version and created the P&L report, and for multiple entities, the tab name remains the P&L report instead of LiveFlow can update the tab name with the company name. So I think it's something that probably was still a little bit in beta, and now you should be able to rename it as you like in Excel. So Excel, for context, is our new product that we just released, I think 3 weeks back publicly, and it has the exact same functions that Google Sheets, but faster. It's amazing, and we actually will be doing a webinar on Excel consolidation, scale and reports across multiple clients and subsidiaries on the 16th of May at 1 p.m. Eastern. And that will be with my colleague who does product here at LiveFlow, whose name is Josh Thomas. Maybe if there are existing customers, you've met Josh Thomas before. He has been working at JP Morgan before joining LiveFlow. He traded securities for nearly 3 years, and now he does product here. He is incredibly knowledgeable, and he can touch the value of creating customized dashboards and then scaling them across multiple QuickBooks clients in no time. No formula consolidation and Excel all during one webinar. So I think we'll share the link here in the chat. Yeah, you're free to join it, and we'll break down all of the products that we have in the house. Any other questions? Anything else for Josh Greenbaum? All right, seems like that's pretty much it. Josh, anything else on your side?
No, I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate the LiveFlow team in its entirety. I always enjoy working with you guys and the constant innovation that you're creating to make our lives more productive. And happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. And if you have any follow-up questions that come to mind later, feel free to send me a message.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And everyone, we will follow up with an email where we will include the link to this recording as well as Josh's templates. Thank you, Kelly, for shouting this out. Thank you. Josh, can you drop your LinkedIn, please, in the chat while people are here and asking for it?
Yes, I definitely will. Give me 1 second real quick.
Why didn't you ever mention your book?
Oh my goodness. Oh, my
yeah,
book.
you completely forgot, I guess.
Okay, so
CFO services.
there's my LinkedIn, and then I wrote a book called Numbers Scare Me and Other Excuses. If you can see that. And this has actually been a wonderful tool. I wrote the book from a place of hearing so many clients be frustrated with their bookkeepers as I was pitching to them to take over. And it was them me wanting to educate business owners on how to better understand finance so that they can ask the right things from us. So if that's a very useful tool, feel free to pass the book along.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Josh. It feels like you're one of our experts and people can shout to you and ask how you've been setting up LiveFlow spreadsheets. And I see you have a buyer for your book specifically, Kelly. Thank you so much for this. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your day and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about LiveFlow. You can also message me directly at Anita@liveflow.io. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.